Good morning, everybody. I'm Todd, Tuckey, President of the Barrie Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to thank you for joining us for this meeting today. It's the Chamber and the Sandbox that are hosting this, and it is a Zoom meeting on Your Brain on Zoom. Won't even touch that one. But before we get started here, I'd like to introduce Paul Markle, our new Interim Executive Director at the Barrie Chamber. Welcome, Paul.
Hey, Todd. Welcome, ladies, to our last and only Zoom meeting this week. Ironically, it is about Zoom burnout. We kind of did that on purpose a little bit to give everyone a bit of a break before we get into next week with some new content. But yeah, I think it's relevant, and it's we got lots of people that were interested in this one today, so I'm looking forward to it. I'll throw it back at Todd, and we'll go from there.
Great, thanks, Paul. So, over the past 2 months, we've all become very, very familiar with Zoom. As a matter of fact, until this crisis hit, I didn't even know what Zoom was, and now I'm like a regular guest on this thing. So it's interesting. It's quite the platform. Zoom burnout is affecting many, and as we participate in multiple virtual calls and sessions through a regular workday. Today we're going to learn how our personality styles affect how we're reacting to the current global situation, how we can learn from each other, and how we can feel more connected to the people on the other side of the screen. So with that, I'm going to introduce our speakers, and our speakers today are Shona Welsh and Jan Bailey of OVATION, experts in speaker training. Shona and Jan travel the world training introverts and extroverts alike to be better communicators and compelling speakers, from Middle Eastern royalty to economists and high school students to corporate leaders. Their uniquely creative and interactive approach gets results every time. After Jan and Shona's presentation, we'll have a Q&A session. To submit a question, please click on the Q&A button, type on your question. I will read the question separately to the speakers for their response. Ladies, welcome.
Hey, thank you very much, Todd.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, welcome everyone. First of all, I'd like to say there is no such thing as a pure introvert or a pure extrovert. If that were the case, you would be in a lunatic asylum. So says psychologist Carl Jung, who should know, as he was actually the originator of the concept of introverts and extroverts. So today we'll be talking a little bit about what that means, what's happening to our brains, and some key tips for introverts and extroverts to get the most out of these Zoom times. But before we get into all of that, we want to talk about how working from home is affecting both of our styles, and let's ensure we're all on the same page.
Thank you, Shona. It really is true. We are all being impacted by Zoom, and we are all being impacted by this way we've had to alter ourselves, frankly. And let's talk a little bit about what people think introverts and extroverts are, because everyone has an idea about it, and most of those ideas are, well, not totally correct. So it's more about how you recharge. Most people think that extroverts are just people who are really outgoing, and they're a bit loud maybe. And people think introverts are, well, it's the same as shy. And that is actually wrong. So what it really is, it's about how you recharge your batteries. So what that means is an introvert who's had a long day or who's been on Zoom all day and is just feeling really drained, that introvert needs to recharge their batteries by being alone. They lose energy when they're around people all the time, especially large crowds. Now, an extrovert, on the other hand, who has had the same long day, being on Zoom and feeling like they're on all day, needs to recharge their batteries by being with other people. They like that social contact. They really want to be with crowds, and that helps them recharge their batteries. They don't want to really be alone. So one of the things that I like, I have actually a quote here that I will read to you about introverts. An introvert has said this about themselves. For introverts to be alone with our thoughts is as restorative as sleeping, as nourishing as eating. Well, that's just by being alone. An extrovert, on the other side, way on the other side, says, when I'm among people, I make eye contact, I smile. Maybe I chat if there's an opportunity, like being stuck in a long grocery store line. As an extrovert, that's a small ping of energy. It's a little positive bright spot in the day. So you can really see how the two are very, very different. And I think it's really important, Shona, that, and all of you watching, that we understand the difference, because it's not about being social or not social. It's about how you recharge your batteries. And that's the important part.
Yeah, great examples, Jan. And I can tell you, they both actually resonate with me, because I'm one of those people that's right down the middle. I am half introvert and half extrovert. So it can be a little crazy making sometimes. I actually like the analogy that I recently read in a Fast Company article that talked about comparing introverted and extroverted to being right-handed or left-handed.
Good one.
The fact that you are right-handed doesn't all of a sudden mean your left hand is useless. So the point is that you may be more extroverted, but you will also have some introverted tendencies, or you may be more introverted, but you absolutely will have some extroverted tendencies as well. It's really not all one or the other.
Yeah, and I think that's really, the handedness idea is really a great idea. And I'm using my right hand, but my left hand is pretty skilled at some things as well. And it's a little bit like, if you think of it like a dimension on a scale, for example. So all of you at home are probably thinking, well, I don't always like to be in crowds, and I don't always like to be alone. It's a lot like, think about like height and weight. So some people are very tall on one end of the spectrum, and some people are very thin. Some people are on the other end of the scale. But there's all of those ranges in the middle, right? So that's kind of like introversion and extroversion. So, and Shona and I work together a lot, and she can say to me, oh yeah, Jan, sometimes you are introverted and sometimes you are extroverted. So we all have a little bit of both in us. We're just tend one direction. So you are all wondering now, well, where am I on the scale? How do I know? How can I tell? So we have some, I don't know, little defining moments, and conveniently, oh, that was very bad Zoom etiquette. We have a little list here. Look, if you are extroverted, odds are very good that you like to be, oh, I have to see where I am here. Odds are very good you like to be social. That's how you recharge. You want to, at the end of a busy day, you don't want to sit at home and watch a movie. You want to go out to a party, okay? You want to be social in order to recharge. That's definitely an extrovert talking. Oh, look at me. I almost licked my finger. Look at that. Alex. Okay. Okay. You love group discussions, not a one-on-one thing. You prefer to be in a group. Lots of noise, lots of idea sharing going on. That is an extrovert tendency for sure. You have many, we'll call them friends. Now, you have lots of friends and lots of acquaintances, but maybe only a few who are really, really close. You like to have lots of acquaintances at the same time. You talk a lot. Now, Shona wrote these, and I feel as though she's pointing her finger at me and perhaps telling me that this is me. You like to talk a lot if you're an extrovert. It feels energizing. There's just no other way to say it. You're easily distracted? What? Totally true. Extroverts, you know it's true. Okay, you know it's true. Enough said. You will open up to anyone. You chatting with that person in the grocery store line, and all of a sudden you realize you're telling them your life story. Okay, that is absolutely an extroversion quality. You make quick decisions. Yeah, I've talked about it. I've heard enough. Thank you very much. Here's my decision. Okay, extroversion, brilliant. You love attention. Okay, it's all about, remember, bringing energy towards yourself. So you love attention. Classic extroversion. And they are the person who has always got something to say at a meeting. So hopefully some of you have seen little bits of yourself in these descriptions. Maybe, like I said, you're on one far end of some of them and not quite so far on the other. So think about where you are. Shona, you want to tell us a little bit about extroverts?
Yes, I do. As Jan said, you do not want to confuse introversion with shyness. Shyness has relations to anxiety, and there's a negative connotation to it. Introversion is not negative at all. In fact, introverts are quite happy to be alone. They're not worried if they're missing anything, and they're not worried if others like or accept them. My husband is a big introvert, and I totally love that about him. He could care less what everybody else thinks, so I love that about introversion. Let's talk about some of the behaviors you're going to see from introverts in yourself at any given time. First of all, they love to recharge alone. I know after I've had a long day of facilitating workshops, I like that introvert part of me comes out and I just want to have some quiet time where nobody's making demands on me. Second, they want to have one-on-one conversations. They feel overwhelmed by all the sensory input in large groups. So the introvert part of me really loves that one-on-one conversations and the coaching that we do. They have fewer friends. They have a very small circle of friends, but those friendships are really deep. It's not like, you know, when you win a radio contest, bring 100 of your best friends. And the introvert part of me always thinks,
Panics.
I don't know if I have 100 friends. Love the way introverts are such great listeners, which makes them also great observers. And I always find introverts are the ones that will say nothing in a meeting, and then they'll sum the whole thing up in one sentence at the end, and everybody just looks at each other and says, yeah, that's totally it. They can focus deeply for long lengths of time. I can spend 3-4 hours totally blissfully unaware of the world in my introversion design time. So that works really well for me. Because they have some really, really deep friendships. Those are the people they trust and they will open up to. So they're not just gonna randomly approach someone on the street and go, hey, how's it going in this pandemic for you? Whereas an extrovert might actually.
Random? What do you mean random?
Random, yeah. Reflection is a really big part of making decisions. Now, the extrovert part of me can make quick decisions, but I know Jan and I working together, I'm much more introverted in the decision-making piece. So I need more time to make those decisions. Yeah, and it helps us make sure we're making the right ones. Introverts don't care about attention. They do not want to be the center of attention. They're happy to do it. Lots of great leaders are introverts and they can make good speeches, but they just as soon hand the mic over to someone else so they can sit back, reflect, and listen and watch. You need to prompt them in meetings to give their ideas, because again, they're so processing, listening, observing, they're not necessarily going to offer their ideas to you. So you absolutely need to prompt them to make sure they're sharing. So now that we're all sort of on the same page about introverts and extroverts, let's talk a little bit about how working from home is affecting both of us.
I would just like to say that I think Shona was implying that I cut people off. I think that's what she was saying there. And those of you who are extroverts can relate a little bit to that sort of, oh, wanting to jump in. I get that. I'll own that. It is interesting, before we move on to some of the tips that we have, it is interesting to note that most of you would agree that society is kind of geared toward extroverts right now. I mean, think about social media. People are out there. Think about we're enamored with fame and people are out there, and we really seem to admire and appreciate that. So when people are more extroverted, they tend to get that attention, and introverts, I sometimes feel badly because they're being, oh, the lights went off behind me. I look very mysterious and dark now. That's okay. The introverts, I feel like, are a little bit undervalued and undersold. So please keep that in mind, especially when you're in meetings, and you do have to encourage people to talk. There's lots going on in the introverts' brains. So despite the fact that society is not doing them any great services right now. So it has been a total adjustment for all of us, introverts and extroverts and everybody on the scale, to try and figure out how to work in this new environment. We're all becoming experts on technology, that's for darn sure, even though we can't keep the lights on. And we're all exhausted. Really, if the truth be known, we're all a bit tired because it's all so new. It feels like it's all such an adjustment. So the extroverts among us are exhausted because even though technically there's a group of us here, it doesn't really feel the same, does it? And you can feel that. I'm talking to a computer screen in a really big room that would be way more fun if it had lots of people sitting in those benches, but it just doesn't. So we're not getting that energy exchange that we really love. And as far as the introverts, well, they're staring at a computer screen as well, and they have to be happy and smiley and on to try and capture the attention of their audience. And that's hard. It's really hard on both of us, I think.
Yeah. And actually the science shows that one of the reasons we're so exhausted on Zoom, both extroverts and introverts, is that nonverbal cues are not as obvious. So we can't see people's faces as well. Yeah. We can't see the gestures they're using. So we subconsciously process body language, whether we're extroverts or introverts. And we actually have to activate a different part of our brain on Zoom to see and try to read those nonverbal indications. So that's why we're both exhausted. But I'd like to actually blame Microsoft for this. Okay. Yeah, because in 2013,
are they listening right now? We should.
I don't know. In 2013, they did a bit of a study having to do with goldfish. Okay.
The goldfish looks a little orange on Zoom, but trust me, the goldfish
It
is
should
gold.
be very, very orange. Yeah. So in 2013, Microsoft did an experiment with goldfish to see how long they could pay attention. And for the introvert, detail-oriented people in the group, yes, you can Google it and actually see what they did. I won't bore you with the details. I didn't believe it myself, but it is true. I tell you this because what they discovered is the attention span of a goldfish is 9 seconds. But because of the advent of social media, technology, we as humans have trained ourselves to pay attention for less time. So our attention span is 8 seconds.
Oh.
Yes, you heard it. We have a worse attention span than a goldfish. Now, one of the reasons we chose to do this Zoom a little differently, not showing you a PowerPoint screen, is you're doing that all the time. So we're trying to shake it up a little bit and add a little bit of interest so you don't know when the next little sign's going to come up. And I'd just like to say, Jan, the extrovert, as soon as the lights went up, see that? Shiny, shiny, she's being distracted by the lights. Whereas me, the introvert, I just go, oh, okay, the lights went off. I'm not going to bother mentioning it. Anyway.
I have to tell you right now, I'm going to cut you off, sorry, because that's the extrovert in me. But I have to tell you, I'm desperate to run around in that room and hit the motion sensor so that the light turns on. And I'm really trying to stand still and pay attention to the camera and not do that. So if I suddenly break free and run for the motion sensor, you'll know what's going on.
Mm-hmm. A true extrovert brain at work. So having given you all the background, what can we do about this? We'd like to give you 5 tips each for extroverts and introverts that are going to make you more effective as you work on your Zoom brain.
Ready? Are you paying attention, squirrel? Okay, no, we know you're there. The first tip for extroverts, we are talking to you, no matter where you are on the scale. The first tip is, I know you don't want to hear this, it's Friday, it's the end of a busy week, you've had lots of Zoom calls, and no pajamas. Get dressed into real clothes in the day. Now, I know you're thinking the first thing that popped into your head is, well, what, Jan, why would I do that? Because nobody sees me anyway. What difference does it make? It's about the attitude and it's about the energy that's involved. When your brain, when you're planning what you're going to wear and you're thinking about putting on something clean, for heaven's sake, maybe it's even ironed. If you're thinking about that, your brain is saying, oh, we're going to go out somewhere. We're going to see someone. Isn't this exciting? And it really does shift your energy. Now, I'm embarrassed only somewhat to admit to you all that last night when I was planning to come out of the house and come and do this Zoom meeting today, I thought, oh, I get to dress up. And so I started trying on clothes thinking, what will I wear? So I'm in my room and there's clothes everywhere. I'm trying stuff on. I even went so far as to go downstairs and show my husband what do you think of this one? What do you think of this one? And I think it's very silly, but I couldn't believe how much it perked up my mood. I really couldn't believe it. I was really, oh, there we go, lights. I was really surprised by that. So it really is a genuine tip when we say no pajamas, make the effort and shift your brain. So that's tip number 1 for extroverts.
Yeah.
Shona?
Well, I have to confess, I didn't think about my clothes till this morning. So there's one little thing. Okay, so introvert tip number 1 is please, set up a private workspace. I need not to be distracted when I'm working in my introvert self. So I do have a separate place. I'm lucky enough in my house to have a separate space. If you're not lucky enough to have that, can you set up a corner of your bedroom? Heck, can you even pin up sheets? I promise nobody's gonna laugh. But how can you carve out that space for yourself when there's an old saying, right? You marry for love, not for lunch. Well, now your partner is underfoot all the time and all your kids, and it's all this sensory input, and that's tough to concentrate when you're an introvert. And as my husband tells me, you don't want to run into me when I'm testy, when I can't get my work done. So the struggle is real. So even if you pin up sheets, find yourself a little corner and stick to a schedule, which Jan will tell you more about.
It really is, you know, we're laughing and making jest, but it really is about figuring out who you are and what you need and how you can make that happen for yourself. So that really is at the root of it all. So tip number 2 for the extroverts, number 2 is, set some work hours for yourself. Here, I'll put it over here so you can see it. Set some work hours for yourself. And why you're thinking again, well, what does that matter? I'm doing what I want to do on my own. I've got to get this project done, and it doesn't really matter what the time frame is. Well, again, it's about how you feel about that. Now, you all know the more time you have, the less you seem to get done. I don't know what that is, but there is some science behind that. So if you set a short period of time, you will be more efficient. That is absolutely proven. 6 hours tends to be about the standard because it's in an 8-hour workday with interruptions and meetings and phone calls and popping off to the bathroom and trying to get the lights to turn on. Sorry, I'm back. You only get about 6 hours of work in. So that's kind of the magic number. Now, when you give yourself longer, it's actually called Parkinson's law. When you give yourself longer, you will take longer. So create that 6 hours, build in some breaks, build in some coffee breaks. You're probably, what time is it? It's 10:30 almost. You're just coming back from a coffee break now. That's great. And have a lunch break. Actually have a lunch break and do that. So it really is important to create those set hours just for yourself, for your mental structure, and so that you know when you have to get dressed.
That's equally true for introverts. Really, really great advice. I start and I end at my regular work hours, and I close the door at the end of the day. So I'm trained to not let that interfere with my home time. But that leads me to tip number 2 for introverts, which is try and eliminate as much sound as you can at home. Now, there will be some exceptions to this. Some introverts love background music. Me, not at all. I need to have complete silence when I'm working. One of the things that happens to introverts is all that sensory input gets really stressful. So for example, if I go to a chamber event like the Women in Business Luncheon or the golf tournament, those kinds of things, it's great for a couple of hours, and then I feel like I'm just being overwhelmed by input. So it's really nice. Those events are really just a couple of hours long, and then I go home and I recharge. So all that noise and sensory input can be really stressful. So try and eliminate as much as it as you can. Even dim the lights a little bit, because that's another sensory input for introverts.
I've got that one handled. The lights will shut off in a minute.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, so the extrovert is still obsessed with the lights. So you are seeing extroversion in action. Cannot let the lights go.
I know you're all laughing because you all know it's true. All the extroverts in the crowd, you know it's true. Tip number 3 for the extroverts: have a hard stop in your day. Now, this is very difficult. It's very difficult for entrepreneurs. It's very difficult for us who are working at home because, oh, I've just got that one more thing that I should do. So try and get that out of your head and find a hard stop to your day. And when that time comes, whether it's 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever time, actually stop. Now, why do that? Well, a couple different reasons. The first one is to avoid fatigue. Your brain actually likes to know, when does this end, right? Think about it if you're an athlete, if you're a runner. So you're headed toward the finish line, you think, but if you don't know when or where the finish line is, how do you know when to do the little sprint on the back end? It's really demotivating and it's really tiring if you have really no idea when the end is coming. So have a hard stop so that you're working toward that number. The second reason that it's really important to have a hard stop in your day is so you have time to build in things for yourself, whether that's a phone call with a friend, or whether that's a walk outside with the dog, or whether a Netflix party, whatever it is that you do that helps you feel like you've had some time for yourself during the day. It's important that you build that in. And the only way you can do that, and you all know this, is if I'm done work and now it's time for me. So really plan that in your day.
Yeah, and related to that for introverts is how we take breaks. Now, usually when here in the office, I don't know about you, but for me, my break time was, okay, I need to get away from people. My break time was my quiet time. I would go off by myself. I would sit outside and have lunch by myself. That's how I recharge. And certainly that's the kind of break that you can take when you're doing video conferencing all week, because you are feeling like overwhelmed by all that input. But on days when you're just sitting there working at your desk for hours on end, in other words, your happy place, introverts, you need to think about taking a different kind of break. I'm doing this backwards. I don't have the spatial recognition. You want to make sure your break is social. So when I have days where I'm sitting at my computer, which is a lot of them now, working away on things on my own, I make sure that the breaks that I take are not also on my own. I'll schedule time with my 20-year-old daughter who's currently home from college, talk to my husband, just have a coffee and chat with people and have that social interaction, because otherwise my husband will accuse me of being that mushroom sitting there in the corner working away and not talking to anybody. He will actually come in and talk to me in the middle of this, and I don't even hear him. I am so deeply focused, as we talked about, on my work. So try and add a little bit of social interaction if you're just sitting at your desk all day. It helps.
I am so thrilled when my husband comes in and interrupts me that you can't even believe it. I'm even eager to talk to my teenage son. That's how bad it gets. Anyway, moving on. Tip number 4 for the extroverts is the same. Have a social lunch of some kind. And I know social has changed, but when your lunchtime arrives and you have a set time for that, get out, go, and maybe you could have a social distance walk even, or you could meet a friend via FaceTime or Zoom or whatever, or just the old-fashioned phone call is not such a bad thing, just so you can hear somebody's voice. You don't have to see their face and see that they're still in their pajamas. So it really is important to have that ping, like our quote said earlier, that ping of energy during the day, where you have someone who's talking about something different and bringing a little energy to your day. So really do build that in, a social lunch.
Yeah, great idea. Tip number 4 for introverts: have a household contract. In other words, guys, let me sit down and say, these are going to be my work hours. Now, I don't have young children anymore, but I did first start working from home when my children were quite young, and they are trainable. I did train them that there were break times, there were work times, and now that you're, quote, homeschooling, for those of you with younger children, I actually involved my children in setting that I did when they were younger, that household schedule. So they knew when they had study time, play time, visit with mom time. I had to train them that just because I was home, I was not always available for play. Now it takes a little bit of time, like probably about a week, for them to adjust, and you can get the older kids to help the younger kids with this. But I found that that household contract about when it was work time and when it was playtime really helped my introverted self focus and feel like I wasn't going to be interrupted. So it was a really great tip for me.
Yeah, and isn't that great that I didn't train my children that, because now they come and interrupt me and give me a break. So it worked out well for me. Tip number 5 for the extroverts: you know who you are. On the opposite end of the spectrum, lots of extroverts, really like sound in the background. They like knowing that they're in an office and there's a bit of a buzz, right? You all know what I mean by that. There's a bit of a hum of busyness around you, and well, we don't have that right now. That hum of work is the neighbor mowing the lawn, maybe, if you're lucky. So we recommend maybe it's music that does it for you, that makes you feel as though you're in amidst something, or maybe a podcast is a really great idea because it's actually someone talking. Now, so that you don't get distracted after 8 seconds, please try a podcast maybe that you already have heard, or that is not quite as interesting as it might be to you, so that you're not distracted by it. It's just kind of the hum of voices behind you to make you feel like you're part of something and you're not alone, but not distracting. That's definitely the tip. So give that a try. You might find that really works for you. Okay, so a little sound.
Okay, and tip number 5 for introverts is actually an appeal to leaders that are extroverts about video conferencing. Tip number 5 for introverts: if you can find opportunities not to be on camera in all your video conferences, that is to your advantage. Again, it's a ton of sensory input. We are getting all kinds of feedback from our clients that introverts are feeling overwhelmed at having to be, again, on camera all the time. And it has to do with not reading, being able to read verbal cues, etc. So we've been coaching some of the leaders we've been working with to consider their video conferencing strategy. So here's what a lot of leaders have adopted. First of all, on Mondays, we have a video conference with the team. We talk about the goals for the week, all that kind of stuff. Everybody's on camera. Tuesday through Thursday, mix up the meetings. Jan just gestured by having the good old-fashioned phone call, amazing, and just finding different ways to have those meetings. And even if you are have a meeting and you want people on camera, like having another way of showing stuff, like we're just using these handwritten low-tech pieces of paper, but you're all probably so sick of PowerPoints. I know I am. I teach 3 nights a week online and I'm so sick of the PowerPoints. So how can you mix it up a little bit that does not require your introverts to always be on camera? The other thing is make it optional for certain meetings in the middle of the week. You can have your camera on, you can have your camera off. And then also a lot of our clients are doing a video conference free Friday. So no video conferences, you don't have to be on.
And today.
Yeah, and we passed up today. Yeah, and so maybe you can have your pajamas on during those times, but we're finding it is actually making a difference to introverts in terms of maintaining their energy. So leaders who are running meetings who are extroverts, keep this in mind and think about ways to shake it up so we're not always on Zoom all the time.
So just a quick reminder, remember, if you're extrovert or introvert, you're a blend. You're absolutely a blend. But think about it, how do I recharge my batteries? Do I like to be social and that recharges me? Well, you're on the extrovert side. Do I like to be alone to recharge? You're on the introvert side. We get it. We're laughing and we're making a little bit of fun just to make it light, but we get it. This is hard. It's hard to work from home. It's a complete adjustment for all of us. And it really is a challenge, especially for everyone, really. It doesn't matter if you're introverted or extroverted. For the extroverts, it's hard. If you enjoy working with others, the tips aren't going to solve your problems, the tips that we gave you, but they will certainly maybe help alleviate some of your working from home woes. So do give them a try and find that this actually is bearable, and maybe we've learned something along the way. I do find that video conferencing, you really feel like you're always on, and that really is hard because we all have roles in our life. Think about it. You're a husband, you're a wife, you're a mother, you're a boss, you're a friend, whatever it is that you are. And what's happening now is all of those personalities, all of those people that we are, they're all in the same room together. It's a bit like going to a restaurant. I love this analogy. It's a bit like going to a restaurant and you run into your dentist, you run into your boss, your teenage son who's annoying and irritating is there, your ex-husband is there. Oh my gosh. And they're all in this little screen in front of you. So it's really a very strange situation that we're all having to adjust to. And it is very, very weird. So cut yourself a little bit of slack and recognize that you're juggling a bunch of different personalities almost at the same time. And I mean that in the nicest way.
Not as in a multiple personality disorder
not as
kind of thing. Yeah, okay,
exactly.
Good to know,
exactly.
Good to know.
Exactly.
All right, so those are some tips and tricks. We're opening up to questions now, and hopefully we can give you some good answers.
All right, thank you, ladies. That was great. Yeah, as you said, we're going to open up to the Q&A part. So just a reminder to submit a question to the moderator. Click on the Q&A button within your Zoom platform, type out your question, and we will ask the question of these lovely ladies.
The technology, we love it. And we
Right, question number 1, here we go. Okay. Do you have any tips for working at home when your new coworker is the opposite work style of you? For example, being an extrovert and your spouse is an introvert.
Oh.
Okay, my first tip is do not keep a loaded gun next to you.
Yes.
All I'm
Good
saying.
Tip. Very good tip.
Yeah, that's the first tip. So my husband, as I mentioned to you, is quite a big introvert. And because I can scale both sides of that equation, one thing that I've learned to do with him, I do appreciate his need for recharging and alone time. So during the workday, I basically stay away from him. I don't talk to him all that much. He'll walk past me in the kitchen at lunchtime and I'll say, how's it going? He'll go, good. That's about all of our interaction. I know that's tough. The extroverted part of me, that really bothers me. So I'll go out in the backyard and talk to my neighbor who's very, very extroverted. So I just find other ways to find that extroversion in my day. But generally, yeah, I sit down and have a talk about what you both need. I will tell you a little bit more information on that. We have a blended family of 5 children, 3 his, 1 mine, and 1 ours. So through the years, we learned that actually having I talked about that household contract, that really helped in our blended family with all the various introverted and extroverted personalities that we had. The 7 of us sat down and talked about how we were going to actually live together without killing each other. And a lot of it had to do with negotiating that space and time to just leave people alone. Jan, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, the only thing that I would add to that is, I'm going to sound like a little old lady when I say this, but we scheduled tea time, and we scheduled lunch so that at 10 or 10:30, whatever time that morning break is, we get together for tea, right? And so that we can have a little chit chat, and so that the extroverted people in the room can have that connection. And hey, how's it going? What are you working on? And maybe I can share my ideas with my husband and say, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? And then we go back to our designated workspace to do whatever it is that we're doing. And then we have lunch together. So he has agreed to kind of come to the other side a little bit so that we can have that connection, and I feel like I have had connection during the day. So we, again, in the workday schedule, we scheduled some connecting time.
Great.
And so our viewers want to know, because there's a real importance here. Is it regular tea or high tea?
And is there scones and cream? That's what I want to know.
Oh, yeah. Oh, the heavy cream. I love the heavy cream. But, this whole working from home and not getting out to the gym is causing a problem. So the high tea has had to shift down to the low tea. Otherwise, we'll be definitely wearing our pajamas and our yoga pants.
Oh, can I just say, it's a danger if your husband is an introvert and a chef, because there's some new creation every day, and it's lovely, but very, very painful.
Yeah.
We have a tea time set every Tuesday for 4:30. Does that work?
Oh, I love it. That's a great idea.
Is that
Is
a
it
golf?
like-
a different kind of tea.
Is it really tea? Yeah.
Different type of tea.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Probably a different kind of snack as well, I would imagine, yeah?
All right, next
No,
question.
I don't do that. But.
This question we seem to get a lot of on our different Zoom calls is, do you have any tips for those who are nervous to go on camera?
Oh, goodness.
Absolutely. In fact, we have a formula we call the SPA formula, S-P-A. It doesn't feel like you're at a spa, but basically it means set the stage, prepare to speak, and then activate your skills. So when you're nervous to go on camera, one of the things that we teach people to do is activate your breathing and posture. So sit in the chair in front of your camera. Make sure the camera is just slightly above eye level, because you don't want to discover any of those maybe extra chins that you have. And be about 3 feet away from your camera, and put your feet flat on the floor. And if you've got arms on your chair, that's ideal. Rest your arms on the chair. It helps make your posture sit up straight. Why does that matter for managing nerves? Because you can take deep breaths. It's not shallow breaths in the top of your lungs. It's deep breath, diaphragmatic breathing. Breathing is important because the more you can breathe, the more it actually counteracts any adrenaline you're feeling through nerves. You're getting more oxygen to your brain. So not only does it help you to project your voice better, sitting up straight and deep breathing, you should be able to exhale for a count of 10 without having any difficulty. That's how you know your diaphragm breathing. It really just helps your nervousness. Prepare your notes in advance. I'm going to share a little secret with you so you can get over your nerves. In front of me on the screen are taped little index cards. Jan and I both have these. So it's all the points we wanted to make sure we made. Go into a meeting with your points ready. You won't feel nervous about forgetting anything. You also need to be looking straight at the camera, but here are your little cheat sheet notes, so you make sure you're still looking at the camera and not over here at your notes. It looks more professional. There are more tips, and if you're interested, you can I'll give you our website address at the end. Please feel free, and we'll send you the SPA formula.
I would like to add just one thing, because one of the things that people have a real problem with is speaking to the camera, right? You're speaking to a little green light or a little red light or whatever it is at the top of your laptop, or you can see yourself on the screen, and it's a very strange sort of feeling to be talking to yourself. So if you can envision in your head that you're speaking to someone who's just on the other side of that camera and you're actually relating to them. So you'll notice that when I'm talking, I'll say, and you all, and I'll relate to you, and you know what I'm thinking. So you're actually thinking about the audience that's on the other side of the screen. Now, although that may make you nervous, it also makes you more relatable. So you're actually speaking to those people on the other side of the laptop screen. And remember, if you're not nervous at all going into a meeting or a presentation, then you might be a little bit flat. So nervous is a good thing. Start thinking of it like excitement, not I'm nervous, I'm excited to deliver this information. And it does tend to perk up your performance a little bit. It takes practice.
Just like your golf game, Paul, you're always talking to the other side.
Well, I don't know. My golf game is good one day and bad the next, which is, of course, the torture that is golf.
The curse of golf, isn't it?
You're still amateur status then.
Yeah, you know, and I wear that label proudly.
I feel a challenge coming on here. That's what I'm feeling.
All I have to do is mention tree to Todd, and he sticks his ball in one every time. So.
Alrighty, next up, as an introvert working with young kids at home, having a completely separate and quiet workspace just isn't possible. Any tips on how to maintain my sanity?
Oh, yeah. I think we are absolutely back to the social contract. And even if your kids are little, it is possible to engage them in that conversation that says, okay, let's talk about mom's time and let's talk about your time. And I think it's important that maybe instead of scheduling your drinking tea, not golf time, maybe you have playtime, right? And so that the young kids are feeling like, I'm getting something out of this relationship, because what happens is kids feel like, yeah, this is not good for me, mom. It sounds like it's all good for you. So how do we make it a benefit for them too? So that mom can't play with you from this time to this time, but I promise you at 10 o'clock or whatever, we will go out or we will do something that you want to do. So again, we're back to, like Shona talked about with her very large family, that you have to have that meeting and create that contract. Shona?
But I do, if I can add something to that in terms of having like younger kids, 3 or 4 years old, that can be quite a bit more difficult to manage. If you do happen to have your partner at home, again, when my kids were little, I talked to my husband about, okay, this is what my day looks like. I cannot have 3-year-old whoever running around in front of me. And we've all seen people on television. I think last year before the pandemic, there was that guy that had the 2 toddlers came in behind. Yeah, and I was laughing. I will say this, though. You can find a separate place if you don't have a separate office, honestly, in your bedroom. That's where I used to go, and I had a lock on the bedroom door, and I would put a little sign out there that would say in a meeting, and I would put a lock on the door. I would get even my older kid who was 6 to, okay, you guys are gonna watch a little movie right now. That's what's happening, if my husband wasn't around to help that.
And a tag team.
A little bit of a tag team. The other thing I'd like to say is this: if they have to be sitting there with you, then they have to be. I mean, I'm finding people are very understanding right now. Everybody's going through this. We all have the same challenges. And while our regular professional self would be horrified if our toddler was sitting there, you know, it happens and we're all understanding it. I had a student on a call last week. We were debriefing a case study, and all of a sudden everybody heard this really loud in the camera. We were just like, okay, what's happening? Well, it turns out her cat was coughing up a hairball. Well, it's a little bit of comic relief that I think is actually, you know, good right now. And so we had a really good laugh about it. And then I had another student whose 2-year-old was running back and forth. It's the world we live in right now. We have to adjust our, what do we call it? Our sense of what's professional, and just give people a break. So,
and laugh.
You know,
for heaven's sake, laugh.
Yeah, and try to carve out that space if you can. Negotiate with your partner. If you're a single parent, you don't have that choice. So if you can I remember one time when my son was 3 and I was on a phone call, I actually, no kidding, I'm not kidding, I took the drawer of cutlery, spoons, and not forks, and I put it in the middle of the kitchen floor, and he was quite happy to play while I was on my call. It's ridiculous what we do when we're single parents.
Okay, so you've answered pretty much most of the next one, because the next one is a follow-up call, but I think I'll read the whole question so we can get to the bottom or the base of it. So it's a follow-up. We have 2 young kids who love nothing more than climbing all over us when I'm working. I often turn off my camera because I feel distracted to others, but then I feel disconnected from the team. Any suggestions?
I would just like to say before we answer the question that don't we all appreciate teachers now?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it really is true. And I think we also recognize what we've missed in our parenting styles as well. It's like, oh, I wish I would have trained my child to do X, Y, or Z, or gosh, I wish I would have encouraged them to play by themselves a little bit more now. So, and that even with my teenager, I laugh because it's great when he comes in for distraction, but there is part of me that thinks, ooh, gosh, I didn't set myself up for this very well, did I? So again, it makes us reflect a little bit on our parenting styles, that's for sure.
Because I know, so just to interject real quick, I know for myself, like when I'm on one of these, I want to see who I'm talking to. I want to see their reactions. I want to see their expressions and what they're doing. So to me, I have a disconnect if somebody's there and it's audio only and there's no pictures. Like, I don't feel like they're actually engaged with what's going on, and that doesn't mean they're not engaged. My perception when I'm watching, it's like, why aren't you here actively participating?
I think one way, and this gets back to, it's a really good point, Todd. This gets back to really understanding what extroverts and introverts need, and allowing people to, like I said, a few times a week, not be on camera. But that, again, thinking through why might they not be on camera? Maybe it's because they're introverted. Maybe it's because, as this person asking the question, you just don't want to distract people with the children. One of the things that I learned how to do when my kids were really young is I thought about an important meeting, or a lot of times I was doing my master's degree at that time. So I was meeting with my advisor, and, I didn't want my kids screaming in the background. I would set out the activities that I know would keep them occupied the longest. So one of my kids, for example, totally loved Play-Doh. It was a total disastrous mess by the time I was done, but I know I could rely on her to sit there for 2 hours and actually play with Play-Doh. I mean, I could see her, and she was perfectly fine. I worried about the mess later. One of my sons was totally obsessed by dinosaurs. So I got a bunch of dinosaur toys out, and he had to write a whole story. He loved writing stories, so he would sit for 2 hours. So when you've got kids that are climbing all over you, that's what I tried to think about was, okay, what do you do well that, will keep you occupied? My granddaughter, who's 6, she loves this show. I can't remember. It's like a science show. I'll put that. I know it's screen time, but we got to cut ourselves some slack right now. I'll put on the science show for her when I'm visiting, and I can attend to my work.
It's really important.
Think about your kid's personality.
Yeah, and think about, like Shona said earlier, you might remember, she said, I look ahead to my day, right? What's coming? What meetings can I have my kids in the background, and what meetings can I not? So you save those screen time, or you save the activity, or you save the performance for when you need that time. So really you have to think a little bit ahead. It's a challenge, but it's all doable.
Yeah, my kid's 22, so I do like an Easter bunny thing with like chips and wine and alcohol, and I lead it away from wherever I am, where I want her to be. And it's been quite
that's a good idea.
Very effective.
Yeah. Good tip.
Okay, next one up.
Todd's like, moving on.
If we are all part introvert and part extrovert, as you said at the beginning, with the rules for each personality type being so different, how do we know which will work best for us?
Okay. Remember, it's about how you recharge. So think about how you feel at the end of a long, busy day. Think about being tired. How do you get your energy back? And that will determine whether you are mostly extrovert or mostly introvert. And then in those different situations, you have to kind of apply the rules. But I think Shona and I both kind of walk the line, as most people do, between introversion and extroversion. And it seems for me, it depends on the kind of activity. So when I'm, for example, facilitating all day, I need a brief period of time to be by myself afterward to kind of collect. Then I want to go and be social. So I figured that out about myself, but I recognize that I do need a little bit of time on both. But if I'm spending the day myself working in my office, I am very clear that I need to get out and to connect with people. So you do have to find the balance for sure. And I know, Shona, you're the same.
Yeah, as one of those people that's really half and half, extrovert, introvert, what I find is I try to mix up my day with both kinds of activities so I don't get completely drained. So for example, if I
feel yourself start to drag a little bit at one point, you think, oh, I got to switch it up.
Yeah. Okay. So that was the extrovert interrupting me. I mean, it's great. This is why we work so well together, right? It's like, okay, be quiet. So what I do is like I've had 3 hours of a kind of an introverted activity, like sitting and designing a course where I'm researching stuff. I know I've been deep diving, deep focusing. I switch up during the day, the things I do. So I make sure I have that balance. So I've got that really nice balanced energy at the end of the day. I've also found another thing that impacts me is my biological time clock, you know, a morning person, afternoon person, evening person. That's another layer that I find on top of whether I'm being introverted or extroverted has an effect on me. So I'll give you an example. I'm a morning person. I would work from 5:30 in the morning and till 2 in the afternoon and be done with it. That's what I'd love to do because I'm asleep by 9:30 or 10. And so lately what's been happening is I'm teaching a lot of night courses. And so I'm totally on, and I have to add all that energy to the group from 6 to 9 p.m. at night. Well, I have to tell you, at 9:15, I am weepingly grateful that I am done because it has sucked the energy right out of me. So that also has to do with my, you know, being a morning person as well. So that's pretty tough for me. But again, as that person who's got both elements, just try to mix up your day so your energy is not drained one way or the other.
To pay attention for a few days, right? Pay attention and watch that and sort of take some mental notes, if you will, and then figure out what works for you. Yeah, find the balance for yourself. So this really is, I guess if we had to kind of sum up the whole COVID experience, it's really about awareness, right? Self-awareness and figuring out who you are and what you need, and the people in your household as well.
For sure.
So Shona, I don't know how much TV you watch, but there's this commercial that seems to be on all the time. And it's just like, this Red Bull gives you wings. Just, you know, starting to wear it. I'm not
that's Todd's advice. Yeah, Red Bull. Yeah, little golf, little Red Bull. Yeah,
Red Bull. I would be vibrating off the walls if I drank Red Bull.
Okay, you have somewhat segued into the next question, which I find it's a little lengthy, but it's very interesting. It says, okay, working remotely with multiple video sessions in a workday is exhausting, makes the workday feel twice as long. What can I do to get a mental break to recharge at my desk so I can keep working? I can sometimes take an actual break, but then adding the time on to the end of the day. But then my workday is actually hours longer and it feels like I'm no further ahead emotionally.
Oh boy, yeah. Okay, so here's a quick little energizer. If you have to be at your desk and you can't leave for what we talked about, those social breaks or quiet time breaks, put your arms out like this. You can do a windmill forward, or you can be sitting in your chair, windmill forward, windmill backwards, but 1 to 2 minutes. You cannot lower your arms under 1 minute. So 1 to 2 minutes. And it doesn't matter what the science is behind it, but we teach our public speaking students to do this as well before they're about to go on stage. There's something, see, I've still got my arms up. It's energizing me. I have to put some physical exertion into it. It's really quick and simple, but just sitting at your chair, it's going to give you a boost of energy. Another thing to do, if you find your eyes are tired from on the screen, close your eyes and place your fingers over your eyelids for about 10 seconds. And it just adds moisture and it feels like you're refreshing your eyes. And then honestly, all the other things we talked about, having a hard stop to your day, keeping regular hours. For example, I had a colleague email me last night, and he's teaching something next week at the same university I'm teaching at. And he said, you need to teach me how to do breakout rooms in Zoom. When are you available on Saturday, Sunday? And I said, I am not available on Saturday or Sunday. I will talk to you on Monday because I'm busy on Friday. So I'm being really, really good at setting hard boundaries because, again, as someone who works from home, like for the last 15 years, I learned this the hard way. You can work 24/7 if you allow yourself to do it. So I've got a hard stop at 5 o'clock Friday night. And unless we've got, you know, obviously there are exceptions to this, most of the time I am done till Monday morning, and I know Jan religiously adheres to that as well. So these are some ways you've got to set boundaries with your boss too, right? If they want to talk to you at 9 o'clock, just because everybody's home 9 o'clock at night, you need to say, sorry, that's family time for me. So setting some healthy boundaries. And also leaders out there, when I was a leader, I used to say to my team members, look, if I think of something and I happen to email you at 11 o'clock at night, I'm only doing that so you will have it in your inbox tomorrow morning. Please in no way think that I am expecting you to respond. I just want to make sure that when you get there in the morning, it's waiting for you. So that made it okay for them not to feel like they had to respond to me immediately.
Is it my turn yet?
I think Paul has an idea.
Oh, it's Paul. Okay, good. Paul, your idea?
Paul,
The good
fire
thing
away.
about that last point is if you're using Outlook, you can schedule your emails to deliver at a particular time.
Yes, you can.
Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
absolutely.
Okay.
I would just like to give one more little exercise to do. I'm just going to back up and see, hopefully you can see my leg, because this one is really great. You can do when you're sitting. What happens is you all know that your right brain controls the left side of your body, your left brain controls the right side. So this is it's called cross crawl, and it's a beautifully energizing, if you can't get up and go for a walk, which would be ideal, this is an exercise that you can do when you're sitting in your chair. So can you still see me? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So even if you stand up or you sit at your desk, this. Okay, so opposite hand to knee. And you just do it while you're sitting in your chair. Okay, I know it looks crazy. Do it for a minute. It's unbelievable what it will do to your energy. And if you start to feel yourself feeling like you can't focus or you're confused or the words are coming out funny, your brain just needs to go and do the cross. So just do that little cross crawl for a minute. There you go. That's it. That's all I had to say.
Thank you. So, Shona, I think Paul has probably spoken with you previously or whatever, because he knows how to cover his eyes well. I watch him do it when he takes the ball. Horrible thing. Horrible thing. Anyways, ladies, this is almost the end of our session. Do you have any closing comments you'd like to share with our viewers?
Well, I just like to say that either way, introverts, extroverts, we all have strengths that work to our advantage. We're not one pure thing or the other. It's okay if you're missing contact. It's okay if you're loving being at home all the time. It's all okay. Just try to respect what people need. And, you know, to that point, Todd, about if they're not on camera and maybe they just need a break. So just being appreciative of people's different needs.
And I would add to that, cut other people some slack. Cut yourself some slack too.
Yes.
Right? Take a break when you need it, and do a little bit of mental health work every now and again, because really this is new for all of us. It really is. It's hard for all of us. It doesn't matter where you are. We laugh and we joke, but it's hard. So cut yourself some slack. And you know what? We're all going to come out on the other side of this better people. So.
Absolutely.
I would like to say, sorry, Todd, if you want the spa model, OVATIONspeakertraining.com. You can write to us and we'll send you that spa model for effective presentations on camera. So don't forget to do that if you're interested.
Excellent. Thank you, ladies. Great presentation. A lot of things I know I picked up from it. I hope Paul did, absolutely, because he could use a little help, but it was great. A lot of really.
Paul, it's a tough day. It's a tough day. Good thing it's Friday.
Listen, I just want to, did everyone enjoy the picture of Sandy while we were doing most of that presentation? I just, you know.
Randomly popped up.
Yeah, it's a great picture.
I'm a little computer illiterate, so when somebody blanks me out, it's like, uh-oh, what happened?
Yeah, yeah. He's so anyways, he's using somebody else's laptop, so that was quite entertaining because he couldn't change the picture. So anyway, we have fun every day.
Thanks again, ladies.
Thank
and
you.
In closing, thank you again. Thanks for all the work that everybody that's watching that you're doing in your businesses every day. We urge every leader in our community to maintain their focus on slowing the pace and the transmission of COVID-19, whatever stage of their operations currently may be at. The Barrie Chamber and Sandbox are here to help you. Please feel free to email or call out for any questions, concerns you might have. You will also find this will be uploaded later on the Chamber and Sandbox site, so you can review it again or share it with your friends. And we implore everyone to please shop local. We do this all the time. Our local restaurants, our local
Absolutely.
everybody needs our help more than ever, and we want to make sure that they can reopen and that they'll be here for us as they have in the past. And also, as our province takes steps towards reopening, please ensure that you continue to follow social distancing requirements and take them seriously. The safety of our community is the responsibility of all of us collectively. And with that, ladies, sign off and have a great day.
You as well.
Thanks. Take
Thanks
care.
so much.
Thanks very much, ladies. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.